Hiya, it's Talking Reds, Josh Sexton and Mo Stewart for the Anfield Wrap. The Premier League action of the weekend is out of the way. Liverpool won, Manchester City weren't given an inch. Last night in the Premier League as well, Manchester United won to those plucky minnows, making sure their top six hopes stay alive. Mo will be recording the top six show later to talk about that as well.
Yeah, I was watching that crap just for all of you, so I hope you enjoy it and I hope you appreciate it. But yes, Manchester United did win their last home game of the season, although by the end of the game there was no one there to see it, and they certainly didn't do a parade at the end of the game. But I will be discussing them amongst all of the other top six teams in the top six show. They have somehow snuck their way still into the top show, but we'll discuss that in more detail on the show.
Less of those bums for now. We've got Champions League semi-final football to talk about, Mo, and Klopp and Trent held their pre-match press conferences yesterday, and it was some really interesting stuff to come out of it, to be honest. I liked the way that both of them were so sort of bullish in their approach, so guarding against complacency, because Liverpool aren't a team that we ever expect to be complacent. They're a team with a lot of mental fortitude and generally take each game at a time, and each game is a cup final as well. But it was interesting that both of them came out and really hit home the point about not being complacent, because it's what Bayern Munich did against Villarreal, it's what Juventus did against Villarreal, and we all saw how those two ties turned out.
It's the biggest problem that we could solve, and that's not to disrespect the problems from within the Villarreal team, but essentially we are still a team that should be good enough to go to Villarreal and win, even if the score was 0-0, let alone 2-0. And that's the mentality we need to approach this game. We need to think of it as this 0-0. And I think that's the message and the mantra that both of them were kind of pushing out there. And it seems like a cliche, because a lot of times you hear teams say it and then they don't prove it, but we generally tend to do it on the pitch as well. So I'm a little bit more confident in them saying it than perhaps some others.
100%, and I'm finding both of their approaches towards the game interesting as well, because I mentioned that idea of taking each game at a time, and I think sometimes managers would go the other way to sort of play down the occasion and make sure the players didn't feel sort of too overfaced by it all. But this Liverpool side are so used to these occasions now that it was interesting actually hearing Klopp come out and saying, no, this Champions League semi-final is the biggest game you can play. For Villarreal, it's going to be, I think Emery came out the other day and said it's going to be the biggest game in their history and things like that. So they're emphasising the importance of it. Trent's talking about the idea of Liverpool being able to go out there and make history. On his Instagram after the League Cup final, he was putting 1 out of 4 and stuff like that. It seems like this team are willing to take on that more responsibility, soak in that importance, and then go out and do the job still.
Definitely, and they are confident in themselves because they've been in this situation many times before. And if you think about it, if they want to embrace the idea that this is massive for both them and for Villarreal, who does that suit? It suits us more than it suits them, 100%. Because you kind of want Villarreal to be thinking that this is the biggest game in their history. And that's not necessarily going to be an easy thing, because the way that Liverpool are going to hopefully approach the game in terms of trying to get the same amount of control on the game and the ball that they had at Anfield, when you're in that situation and you're thinking, shit, this is the biggest game of our lives and we can't even get near them, like, that's the point when you get that psychological benefit can slip in our favour.
Yeah, Ronnie Hotdog says, get a goal and it'll become an open game. I think he probably means Villarreal get a goal and it'll become an open game there. But if Liverpool can get a goal, I think that's one of the keys to this, isn't it? There's been talk about the approach of the two sides, the fact that Villarreal will have to come out a little bit more than maybe they did at Anfield. I think they'll probably try and use the atmosphere, won't they, to get in Liverpool's faces more so than playing on the front foot. But for Liverpool, it's all about making sure they still play their way, they get their chances, and then hopefully take them as well early on.
Yeah, I think the kind of using the atmosphere and making it hard for Liverpool kind of makes you think that they're going to be trying to fly out the traps and sprinting towards our goal. I don't really think that's going to be the case. I think it's more they're going to be flying into tackles and pressing us and trying to make it difficult for us to play our football, because the crowd know that, if a pass from Trent goes out of play, then the crowd's going to cheer because they know that our plan is failing. Whereas for their plan, they know that taking it deep, even in the second leg, taking it deep is their best option. And the interesting thing for me is Gerard Moreno. Reports are saying that he might push himself back because it's the biggest game in their history. Yeah. But with hamstrings, we've seen players come back too soon and it'd be more of a hindrance than a help. But I think because of the way that Emery wants to play and the benefit of having someone like Chukwueze with his pace to come off the bench as opposed to having him from the start, I think they might risk it. And we'll have to wait and see how beneficial that is for them. But psychologically, having him there is massive for them. But if he's not fit, then it's definitely an advantage for us.
Yeah, you talk about some of the selection dilemmas for Villarreal there. There's probably a few sort of selection dilemmas now for Jurgen Klopp. We imagine he will revert some of those changes back that he made at the weekend. They were actually talking in the press conference, Klopp and Trent, which I found interesting, about this Liverpool side and you know, the idea of giving them rest and giving certain players rhythm, and the fact that, you know, in the past few seasons when Liverpool have gone to Champions League finals and gone all the way in seasons, they've almost limped over the line. They've been having lads coming back from injury at the wrong times, some coming back from injury just nearly at the right times, but not quite. Whereas now at the moment, you know, there's only Bobby Firmino who's due to be missing for this game. It feels like, you know, for the whole squad that Jurgen Klopp's got to pick from there, he can go as absolutely strong as possible for this one.
And I think that was always going to be the case. Some people were kind of surprised that the changes came against Newcastle rather than this game, because of what we've seen in previous legs where a lead has allowed us to kind of rotate like we saw with Benfica. But I think the fact that this is semi-final, the fact that it is only a 2-goal lead, means that you can't afford to take those chances. You can't give them a sniff. And we've seen that rotating doesn't necessarily mean weakening. I think that's another really key point that we have to reiterate, because if you speak to Klopp, he'll say that's been the key difference every single year. Like, the reason why we haven't been in this position for the last 3 seasons when we've been amazing is for that reason. We haven't had everybody fit at the right time. There's always been a weak point that we've had to cover for, and that's been exploited. At this point, there are no weak points, which is why we are in this position. So we just have to keep ramming that home.
Yeah, absolutely. Who do you think will be the sort of, I suppose, questionable starters for this one then? I suppose the few key areas are the midfield, centre-back with Matip and Konate, and then probably the front three, would you say, for this one?
It would be a very large vote of confidence for Ibu to start both legs, I think. I
think he will?
I think he might.
I think he might.
I think he might, because I think Klopp might be wanting Matip for both league games, for Spurs and Villa. And so you say, okay, you go out and do the job over there. And I mean, because he's been so good in the wake, it's almost like Klopp has been kind of surreptitiously giving him this extra test all season long. It's like, I'm going to put you into all of the atmospheres. I'm going to put you into all of the away Champions League games. I'm going to put you in Old Trafford. I'm going to put you in at Stamford Bridge. I'm going to see how you deal with that. And he's passing those tests. So you think, okay, every time someone does something good and Klopp likes it, he gives him the chance to do it again. So I expect that. Further forward, I think that Salamani Diaz is still strong, still the strongest. It feels like I'm saying Groundhog Day here, but the question for me is, again, Henderson Keita. And a lot of it depends upon what you think that they're going to be doing or what you think you're going to be needing. Who would you prefer to have at the end of the game? Who would you prefer to have at the start?
Yeah, that's on that side of the argument. I think I fall on Naby starting and Henderson coming off the bench. I think I can see a scenario in which, you know, Villarreal want to make the game tight until the end and then try and make it mad, because that's the sort of blueprint they've had in past Champions League games. Now, I think I'd like to see that, and then you know, if that is the case, then Jordan Henderson coming into the fray to just sort of calm things down, make sure he's leading by example, keep everything ticking over would be the wise way to go, I think.
I think so. And again, I think it's an easy sell for him. You know, see us home, Skip. Definitely. And yeah, hopefully he will.
Yeah, get your comments in about that game. We've got a few coming in already. A few people saying they're either nervous or not nervous. Ronnie Hot Dogs again says he's as nervous as Craig must be before deciding on his next outfit for Talking Reds. Few sort of compliments on the outfits. Belinda John says, loving Josh's top today, but then conversely, Copman99 says, is Josh wearing PJs?
I can confirm he's not.
I thought you were going to say I can confirm he is then. Really like lean into it. I am still in my pyjamas. Harriet Pryor of this parish says, deciding on a Talking Reds outfit is impossible. I feel like me and you have done like quite a good job of it today. Both worn a little bit of red.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm picking not just for Talking Reds, but for top six as well, you see. And sometimes with top six, I'll have like a hoodie on so I can kind of take it off and pretend that it's 2 different shows. We've gone past that charade.
He's doing this for you guys. Do you see that?
I'm putting in all this extra work that no one else sees.
All this extra work that goes on behind the scenes. Speaking of work that goes on behind the scenes, Mo, James Milner has been working a lot behind the scenes this season. He got his chance to work in front of the scenes, is that what you'd say?
In the scene.
Against Newcastle the weekend, and did not disappoint at all.
No.
And it's no surprise really to see that there's been a bit of talk about his contract off the back of that. There was a suggestion earlier in the season that the Reds were going to offer him a new contract, and he had a bit of a hint at that after the game. In one of his interviews he sort of said, you know, he's really happy at the club, he's loving that the club are in the position they're in, and he wants to be a part of that. And it seems like Liverpool's contract extension is still on the table. to me, it's a no-brainer. If both the player and the club want him to be there, then surely he just signs a new deal.
I mean, that really sounds like how it should happen.
Simplified it.
I mean, with all of these really complicated transfer and extensions, you think maybe that one's quite easy. The interesting thing, though, is obviously people were assuming that he would leave and therefore there would be a space for a new midfielder to come in. Obviously, there's already Fabio Carvalho coming into the mix, but I think with all the Chouameni/Bellingham talk, a lot of that was predicated on the idea of Milner's place not being there. We don't know. There may be other midfielders within the squad who may not be there. I mean, I think we all know who I'm talking about. But as for Milner, it all comes down to what he wants, what he believes he can do, because he's not going to get more minutes next season than he got this season for Liverpool, regardless of the fact we're probably playing more games. But, and I mean, this is probably the other elephant in the room, all the talk has been if he does move on, he'll be going to Leeds. If Leeds aren't in the Premier League, he's probably not going to want to go to Leeds. He's absolutely not going to want to be schlepping up and down it in the Championship. No chance.
42 games in those legs.
No. So yeah, if Leeds stay up and it turns out the finances or maybe some of the other considerations don't match up, then I can still see him moving on. But if Leeds go down, he'll probably be here next season.
Yeah. I'm just sort of imagining the fume that's going to come out if James Milner does sign a new contract before Mo Salah and maybe arguably a few of the others. You know, we've got Naby Keita, who is coming into those contract conversations now. His deal is apparently up in 2023 as well. Sadio Mane, Bobby Firmino, of course. I think that will cause a bit of fume.
I mean, the thing is, right, when has Klopp ever done anything based on the lack of fume? Never. Never ever. In fact, sometimes he's actively invited it, I think.
I think I was like slightly fuming when I saw Gomez on the team sheet at the weekend and he made me look like a dick. It's not hard.
I know, well, I'd literally just written a piece about how Joe Gomez is going to get more games next season, so I was very happy that he started. Hey, always be ahead of the curve, Joe. Now, I think... it's not always that simple, genuinely. It's not simple. But the thing I thought with Milner, the interesting thing for me is that his performance against Newcastle was better than some of his 15-minute cameos have been. In fact, better than all of his 15-minute cameos have been. 100%. And I wonder whether this has been... We talk about Klopp going one game at a time, and that's very much how he is on the surface. But frankly, when you're a club the way we are, you can't do that for everything. So I wonder whether he took him aside a couple of weeks ago and said, look, St James's is yours. I need you to go up there. I need you to
battle.
Yeah, battle. You know the place. You used to play there. You know exactly what they're going to try and do. You've seen it all, and I need you to deal with it. I need you to give me peak Milner, 75 minutes. And he was like, no problem, boss.
Yeah, say no more.
Yeah, and he was able to get himself ready. Because think about it, when you know in advance you're playing a game and you know your specific role, you can prepare yourself for it. You can think about it. You can get into that mode. When you're on the bench, particularly when you're someone like Milner on the bench, you're not always sure you're going to get on. Like, when Salah's on the bench, he knows he's getting on. When Milner's on the bench, he might not get on, especially if we're like 3-0 up or something. And you've still got to then switch yourself on if you do come on. Whereas if you can prepare, you can plan. And maybe going forward, that's what it's going to be for Milner. Maybe it's going to be, okay, we're going to give you 15 starts across the season out of 60 games, including cup games. But you're going to know which ones. You're going to be able to prepare, you're going to have a specific job, and you're going to be able to excel in it. And if that's what he wants, if that's good enough for him, then fine.
Yeah, well, who knows if we'll see one of those 15-minute James Milner cameos off the bench tonight. We'll read a few more of those comments. You've had them coming in. Phil Stratford agrees with us. He said, I think we start Keita, Fabinho and Thiago, Hendo off the bench around 60. I think that's pretty much fair, isn't it? Harriet Pryor has been on again. She says, does Robbo get a rest for this one? I'm not of the opinion that Robertson should get a rest for this one. I think there's a time and a place for Tsimikas, and I'm not sure the Champions League semi-final second leg in a cauldron like Villarreal Stadium's going to be is for Tsimikas.
If we were going to see him, we'd have seen him a bit more recently, I think Robbo is kind of making himself undroppable. And as much as there's obviously the sports science element with a lot of people, I think he's, again, one of the fittest, so he's probably going to be at the top of those marks anyway. He's one of those people where it's like, even if you drop him, like, you're going to hear from him. And I don't think Klopp really wants to be without him if he doesn't absolutely have to. He's been superb. Also, Harry, haven't you got anything better to do?
Well, she's stimulating the conversation. You know, I'm into it. Meme Create, which is apparently a registered trademark, so congratulations, Mr. Create, says would start Costas and Jota. They've got chemistry on the left. I think I'm doing the complete opposite. I think I'm doing Diaz and Robertson as we've suggested there. Are you all in on Diaz for this one?
Yeah, I think so. I think just in terms of the way that he's able to draw teams to him, because you can have a plan, but when someone can go both directions and with such speed, I think sometimes those kind of players break whatever plan you have, and you find the opposition defenders panicking and trying to stop him in whatever way, and that helps everyone else. So yeah, Diaz for me.
It seems to be getting a lot of love, Costas, in the comments. There's quite a few people saying to start Costas in this one. Game time for Minamino, Origi and Jones as subs. I wouldn't have thought so in this one, bar Origi. I think there's a world in which Origi comes on in this one. I think for Minamino and Jones, there's probably a few Premier League games towards the back end of the season where they get a little bit.
The only factor with Curtis is if Thiago is starting to look a bit leggy, then you make them move. But otherwise, I agree.
Skyjacker says the tour boss should make them wear a uniform, including a cap and pin-on tie.
I come here because there is no uniform.
Mo can't be changing hoodies for different shows with a uniform on. Unless we give you different uniforms for different shows.
No, well, the only other time that I've been pressed into wearing clothes for this show was when we were doing Tokyo Time hats, and I think that's fair to say that was a 50-50 shoot.
The Spaniard has asked a question directly for you, Mo.
Oh, okay.
Are you ready for this? He says, do you think we'll sign Tchouaméni?
I want to say yes. I mean, if James Milner signs, it makes it a little bit harder, I must admit. At the moment, it depends more on Real Madrid than us. I believe that we have put an offer proposal to him, but I think Real Madrid are a little bit further down the line. It's whether or not they can persuade him that the guys who are currently in those positions are eventually going to retire. If not, we're in.
Absolutely, we're in. I'm sorry, I'm just scrolling through some of the comments here. There's been a lot of chat going on. I'll read this out to finish off from the Wolfman's Got Nards, good name. Says, the year is 2050, the earth is a post-apocalyptic wasteland, the old orders have fallen, mankind's survival hangs by a thread. James Milner signs a 1-year extension. Very good. And the Reds are in there, what's that, 2050? 30th Champions League semi-final in a row?
Yeah.
That's been talking Reds.